Peace and love, family. The Ministry of Health and Wellness is currently looking to enforce prescription requirement for contraceptives. And a lot of the women are a little bit upset about that. Some women actually support it. Many women can actually testify that contraceptives really does work. It helps them to avoid pregnancy. A lot of women also experience temporary relief from hormonal issues, but there are some who say that these contraceptives are very harmful. So harmful that they can cause serious issues like cancer. Now we want to investigate that question. Is it true? Is it true that these contraceptives can cause that kind of problems? Well, according to the head minister of Belize, prime minister, there's no data to support this claim here in Belize. However, do we really need data that is specific to the women in Belize in order to support that claim? Or can we use data that's already been collected, gathered, and analyzed from official clinical studies done on that subject? Well, without getting into the politics, right? I'd like to share some scientific publication that can help shed some light and, clear up some of the doubt. Because you see, many of my clients are women, and these women are mothers, their daughters, and they have genuine concerns. And many of them are dealing with cancer, tumor, fibroids, cysts. Many of my clients, they are not able to get pregnant. They can't keep a baby. And a whole lot of women reach out to me looking for remedies for how to regulate their hormones. So it's obviously a big issue right now. And most of these women nowadays are taking contraceptives or have taken contraceptives. And I'm sure that any reasonable woman would like to see some type of evidence that can clear up the doubts, right? So I'm going to talk about two main studies, main reports, doctor reports from 2009 and 2015, and seeing what these reports have to say regarding this topic. Now, in order to talk about contraceptives, we need to understand hormones, right? So first, I want you to imagine that hormones are like tiny text messages that your body sends, right? And it sends it out in order to keep things balanced. It sends it out to keep everything working in balance. And things like your period, things like your mood, your ability to have a baby, even how your breast or your uterus grows and develops. Yeah, and the two main hormones in charge for all of this is basically we're going to look at is estrogen and progesterone. Right? Now, imagine now you have your hormones producing, it's sending out these messages. But imagine now that something else comes and interferes in those messages, right? Something like spam messages. And these spam messages, when they come into the system and interfere, they confuse the hormonal system. Mainly known, these confusions, these little spams right here are mainly known as endocrine disruptors, because the hormonal system is basically the endocrine system. The endocrine system is the primary system of glands that excrete hormones. So these little spam messages are like endocrine disruptors. It disrupts the normal flow of signals. So we're gonna call these spam messages endocrine disrupting chemicals, right? So what do these endocrine disruptors do to the body? Well, one, they mimic hormones. They look like hormones. And they make the body believe that they're real hormones. That's one. Another thing they do is that they signal cell death, meaning that they interfere with the signaling pathways which are crucial for cell death regulation. The third thing it does is it tends to bind on certain hormones. So if you have a hormone here, these artificial hormones tend to bind on these certain hormones and making these real hormones unusable. Another thing that it can do is it can turn one hormone into another hormone. Another thing that these endocrine disrupting chemicals can do is they can accumulate in certain hormone producing organs. They can also increase the production of certain hormones and decrease the production of certain hormones. So as you can see, all in all, they can cause a lot of chaos, a lot of disorder, a lot of imbalances, which is expressed as what we call hormonal imbalance. So these chemicals are not just drugs that the doctors prescribe, in contraceptives, but they are also in everyday food supply. They're in plastic bottles. They are in receipts. If you ever get like a receipt from a store, they're in receipts. They're in scented soaps, those fake soap, those artificially infused soaps. But then there's the pesticides also in the food supply. And even in your makeup, these chemicals are everywhere. And these endocrine disruptors look just like, enough like your hormones, your real hormones, as per your body. So in 2009, the Endocrine Society, it's a big group of doctors who specialize in hormones. They wrote a very first big report on these chemicals. And they looked at the hundreds of studies on animals and on people. And this is what they found, right? They found that these chemicals can mess with how a baby girl reproductive system develops even before it's born. So baby in uterus still, or baby still in a pregnant woman. If the pregnant woman is consuming these endocrine disruptors, those endocrine disruptors can actually affect the baby when it comes out, when it's born, and it affect how the baby develops. They also found that these chemicals raises the chances of breast cancer, uterine cancer, and other hormone-related cancers later on in life. They also found that these chemicals are linked to fibroids, they're linked to ovarian cysts, they're linked to endometriosis, and they're also linked to the problem that we see a lot, which is trouble to get pregnant or keeping pregnancy. They found that these chemicals also contribute to periods that become irregular or very painful, because these chemicals tend to throw the woman off their natural cycle. So this is the first time that they actually sounded the alarm through this report in 2009. Now, 6 years later, in 2015, the same doctors, they wrote a follow-up report, and this report is called EDC2, Endocrine Disrupting Chemicals, EDC2. And the report actually confirmed and strengthened everything from the report in 2009. The bottom line is that from both of these reports, these everyday chemicals are toxic to the endocrine system. And it's actually helping to increase a lot of diseases in women. Basically, it's making women more and more sick. So now let's talk about these contraceptives now, right? So whether it's the pill, whether it's the patch, whether it's the shot, whether it's the hormonal IUD, many women love them because they work great to prevent pregnancy. And this part is true, it's important. But there's a truth behind all of this. And unfortunately, the truth is that these pills use synthetic versions of hormones, and meaning that they use man-made chemicals. And it is used to help to stop ovulation, meaning that it tricks your body into believing it's already pregnant, and it doesn't, your body doesn't release an egg, right? So your ovaries don't release an egg. So you don't have ovulation. So it internally shuts down your natural hormonal system, messaging system. And every month this happens if you're taking the pill or the patch. So that's how it works. Now, for some women, it can regulate heavy menstruation or painful periods. It can also even help to shrink fibroids or endometriosis temporarily. But for others, especially if you already have hormonal imbalances and you take these contraceptives, it only adds on to the hormonal imbalance. So even if you take these contraceptives, it might mask some of those symptoms, but it won't really fix the root cause. Understand? So when you stop taking these contraceptives, women will eventually just rebound to irregular cycles and acne and mood swings and painful cramps. So the contraceptives adds synthetic hormones on top of the endocrine disruptors that is already in your body from the food supply and from wherever else it is found in today's modern world. Now, a key note to take from all of this is that the endocrine disruptors are toxins. The body recognizes them as toxins and they must eventually be detoxified. Because if they're not eliminated from the body, if they're not detoxified, right, it will then remain in the body and accumulate in some of the glands. It'll accumulate maybe in the ovaries, or it would accumulate in some part of the reproductive system. And then this is going to lead to tumors, cancers, fibroid cysts, and inflammatory responses like endometriosis. Now, the body is very smart, it is very intelligent, and it can regulate itself. It can clean itself, it can fix itself. But, and this is a big fat but, it needs to be able to communicate properly through the nervous system and the hormonal system. So if there's something interfering, it's not going to be able to communicate properly. And then you're going to see hormonal imbalances express themselves somehow, some way, someday. These chemicals can be found in the shampoo, the hairspray, the lipstick, the deodorant, the body lotion, the perfume, nail varnish, eyeshadows. They can be found in a lot of the beauty supply products. And when these products are placed on the skin, they may get absorbed. Again, if you'd like to read more about these two studies and these two reports, it's entitled, and you can Google it, Endocrine Disrupting Chemicals, an Endocrine Society Scientific Statement, published in Endocrine Reviews, June 2009, Volume 30, Issue 4, pages 293 to 342. And then you could look at the follow-up studies from that as well in 2015. So, using contraceptives is a personal choice, and every woman should have that freedom to use and choose it. But if it comes with the suffering of irregular menstruation, of urinary tract infection, of vaginitis, of uterine fibroids, polycystic ovarian syndrome, if it comes with endometriosis, breast cancer, ovarian cancer, cervical cancer, miscarriages, stillbirth, premature birth, loss of breast milk, if it comes with thyroid disorder, then women deserve to know the facts in order for women to make better decisions, right? So, and it goes a little bit further, because it's hard to avoid these things nowadays, because they are even found in pharmaceutical drugs. They're also found in food products. They're found in food containers, in air freshener, in pesticides, in milk and cheese, in chicken, especially in chicken. So basically, all the meats that are grown commercially, more than likely, they're being injected to grow faster with artificial hormones. So this is a very important subject, and I know a lot of women, they want to be properly informed. And therefore, I hope this information that I'm sharing with you can shed some light, and I hope it can encourage many of you to make certain changes to become more aware. And if you'd like to know more, you can go and look up the study for yourself. Truly hope that this helps you. Thank you so much for watching. Peace, love, and health.